Hello, welcome back YouTube. I am Stacy Harder and I am reading chapter 5 on my mother's book, Many Were Called, Few Were Chosen. If you're joining me today, thank you very much. This is Remembering Love. This is a read. I love this chapter. Okay, so chapter 5, Remembering Love. The volunteers knew that love was the answer to the woes of humanity. Love was the key that would unlock the chains that held Earthians down. The Earth-based volunteers tried desperately to remember love as they entered into each new Earthian existence. The Earthian vibration were so different, so foreign to the universal love vibration, and life held so many challenges and so many distractions that it was easy to forget the love vibrations as they entered and re-entered the Earthian world. The Earth-based volunteers tried everything. They made arrangements with fellow volunteers before they entered the physical. They hoped that meeting on Earth with another volunteer would trigger a remembrance, and sometimes it did. They arranged to have special events come into their lives. Some disasters would cause them to turn to God. I'm going to go live because I feel like this is really good and I want to read this chapter. Okay. The Earth-based volunteers tried everything. They made arrangements with fellow volunteers before they entered the physical. They hoped that meeting on Earth with another volunteer would trigger a remembrance, and sometimes it did. They arranged to have special events come into their lives. Sometimes disasters would cause them to turn to God. Sometimes it was great abundance that would help them to remember the abundance God had intended. All these events worked sometimes, but at other times nothing worked. There were no easy answers or quick solutions. No matter how they schemed or connived or plotted, prior to entering the physical, it remained an individual choice to be made while on Earth and in the physical. Being in the physical form seemed to change everything. Choosing love was easy outside physical density, but much more challenging while in the physical. In order to choose love, one had to move through all the distractions and illusions. One had to remain focused on the reality of the God source and the real reality before one could move into the universal vibration of peace and harmony. Earthian existence did not often support such basic beliefs. Instead, Earth encouraged competition, materialism, and greed. Control and manipulation were lessons more easily taught on Earth by those in residence. Indeed, it was a challenge for the volunteers. The Earth-based volunteers knew that if they could remember unconditional love, it would trigger a greater remembrance. Thus began a process of becoming more obsessed with love, just becoming obsessed with love. Love on Earth was different from love outside the physical. On Earth, it was a sexual or emotional experience, such as male or female love, love for an object, or love as a reaction to some pleasant event. But true unconditional love was different. It simply was. Earth love was a reaction to something. Unconditional love is. It is not limited to a person, object, or event. Unconditional love radiates from the God force within It is honoring and respecting all of parts of the one. All energies that come into contact with this unconditional love vibration are affected by it. Unconditional love transforms all to a higher vibration. The earth-based volunteers knew this when outside the laws of the physical. They tried to remember it while they were in the physical. Unconditional love on earth was difficult to achieve. Earth-based volunteers would sometimes become obsessed with one form of love or another. Many became the great lovers of all time, settling in, earthly in form, for a brief exposure to the God force vibration while in the physical. Love in the physical became a playground of opportunities to explore. The volunteers enjoyed the experience, as did their partners, but there was always an emptiness when it was over, for the true essence of who they were recognized that these games were really searches for something deeper, something more meaningful, something they did not yet understand while in the physical. They were still in search of the way home, for it had to be rediscovered during each lifetime and within the given set of circumstances that lifetime brought. The way was difficult, but they knew in their heart of hearts that love was the light for that journey. Thus, the search for love was always a part of each Earthian experience. Earthians and volunteers searched for love, but understood it not. They used the word love, but understood it not. Earthians had not learned to experience and or express unconditional love. Therefore, few models existed. Even so, the volunteers were gallant in their attempts to bring unconditional love into the vibration of humanity. While in the physical, they understood not that love is, indeed, something that starts in the universal God presence. Between physical existence, they could understand that love is the glue that keeps all matters together. They understood that when humanity failed to feel love, they felt scattered, not together. Humanity does feel love, but what is felt and what could be felt is like a blade of grass compared to a giant California redwood. Humanity has failed to allow love to expand and grow and flourish so that it could be the great force it was designed to be. For if humanity could only operate in love, no rules, no police, no armies would be needed. For no one could do anything to hurt or harm another. No hate, no fear, no guilt, no judgments, no self-doubt could exist, because these would not be in harmony with universal, unconditional love. These lesser qualities simply could not exist, and Earth would indeed be a beautiful world to love in. Under the law of free will, however, it must come from each individual's choice, not imposed from someone or somewhere else. Lightworkers, the Earthian volunteers, had chosen to come to Earth to help. They knew all about unconditional love until they entered the physical. On Earth, it was easy to forget. It was easy to encrust God's love essence with concerns of ego or self and of physical. What if I'm taken advantage of? What if they think I'm silly? What if no one loves me back? What will people think? What if? What if? These were some of the ego concerns that plagued humanity. The volunteers, like the Earthians, had to choose love while in the physical. If only they would remember that choice is not really necessary, that all they have to do is surrender to the natural state. This natural state of unconditional love flows freely if it is but allowed. Between Earthian lives, the volunteers were given instruction During meetings with their council and during periods of sleep, they were shown the way. But upon rising, the conscious mind ruled, and it did not always wish to allow the unconditional love to pour forth. For it feared losing its position of importance. It feared for all that what ifs. Some founders did indeed find love. Those who did found a state of bliss that few could relate to. They moved into the state of being in the vibrational frequency of unconditional love. This was the vibrational frequency of home, of the God source, and in that state, they found everything. There's like a side note, sidebar. Light workers have chosen to come to Earth to help. It was more difficult and time-consuming for the first light workers to allow the unconditional love to flow forth, but much faster for those who followed, for they had the great teachers and the love essence to ignite them. The first volunteer for each lifetime stumbled to find the path. Then they illuminated the way for others. That's why the volunteers had been carefully selected and guarded and given very important life lessons. Some struggle more than others, but they need to feel the resistance, for they are sent to work with those who resist the most. If they did not know how real the struggle is that rages inside, they would not be as effective with their followers. The lives of the earth-based volunteers have often been filled with doubt and with trials and tribulations, for they need to feel the struggle and remember it well. The time shall come when they will be the most trusting and the most sure. They might become impatient with others who are slow in their awakening to the truth of all that is, had they not experienced these same resistances. They must sit and bring forth the memories of their struggle and be able to laugh. These volunteers clear the way and illuminate the path so that others may follow. These awakening volunteers are in all walks of life. They may be teacher, garbage collector, housekeeper, or toll booth attendant. They can be easily recognized, for they radiate a special love. And one feels uplifted just being in their presence. Anyone who allows unconditional love to flow through his or her life and essence is a volunteer in service to planet Earth. When humans existed in this vibratory place, they created a force field around them that is truly earth and life-changing. Much like a tuning fork, which when struck causes all things in its present to also resonate at the same frequency. These volunteers assisted in all in their presence to resonate in turn to the God source. The Earthians who came into the presence of the volunteers, who were carrying the divine frequency, did not fully understand what was happening to them. They knew that when they were in with the volunteer, they felt better and life was more complete and joyous. The unawakened volunteers were drawn to this frequency like few others, for they craved what it had to offer them: home. Thus, the enlightened volunteers were sought out of their company, for they carried the frequency of living light. The volunteers who had allowed unconditional love were always surrounded by others. Depending on their Earthian mission and station in life, they might have had followers, supporters, subjects, or simply friends. But always the unconditional love caused the volunteers to move into a life shared with many. A shared life is a life of service, and the volunteers fully understood this. Although others may have felt they were serving the volunteers, it was the volunteers who were serving the Earthians. The Earth-based volunteers had come into Earthian existence to serve Mother Earth and the God Source, for they knew that their greatest source of joy and growth comes through service. They had found all they sought through unselfish service. They served all by radiating the divine frequency. This frequency radiated out from their very existence. It became part of the planetary mass consciousness, the totality of all frequency on Earth. When this happened, it raised the collective consciousness on Earth. This healing was needed for both humanity and Mother Earth. These Earth-based volunteers often serve the Earth by giving up their privacy and moving into a public life in which there were many demands placed on their energy. They moved into public awareness in many ways as great teachers, writers, actors, politicians, and as leaders in every field of endeavor. As the public felt their great vibration, they were sought out. Everyone wanted a piece of what these special volunteers had, and that was not always easy for the volunteers, but it was always willingly allowed. Being in the public eye allowed the volunteers to model for all. The volunteers knew that by giving of themselves, they allowed others to move also into their greatness. By giving of themselves, they knew that others would find their way through the earthian world of third dimensional illusion. This was a great, wondrous gift. They truly gave to themselves. As the volunteers opened to a world in which they had greater influence, they knew that the influence came from the God source, which they willingly carried on behalf of Mother Earth. They knew it was not them, but what they shared on behalf of God, which was the object of the admiration. They sought not for followers, but lovingly touched all on behalf of the God essence. Thus, the greater good was served. These volunteers drew much criticism and attack from those who rejected the divine frequency. Nonetheless, the volunteers knew that it was often important to be the grain of sand in the oyster shell of the Earthian's existence, and that was their important job. They knew that being the source of aggravation could be the catalyst for growth, change, and beauty. So they did not attempt to be what everyone wanted them to be, but rather tried to stand in their divine God, connected in connection, and be all that they could be. They did not try to not ruffle feathers, but sought always to stand in their own truth in all ways, including vibrationally. The volunteers feared not for their own well-being during these times of drawing criticism and attack, for they trusted the power of light and love. They knew they carried the frequency of the God source, and in this came the assurance that all was in divine order. They had surrendered personal will to that of the divine will. Therefore, they knew that only that which would serve the greater good could occur in their life. I'm going to repeat that. I think that's important. They knew. Okay, we'll start again. They had surrendered personal will of that of the divine will. Therefore, they knew that only that which would serve the greater good would occur in their life. They feared not for their physical well-being because they knew that if they were physically impaired by acts of violence, this too would serve the greater good. Over the Earthian history, many of the volunteers willingly experience martyrdom. Some are still being read about in the history books, thus still serving the divine cause. They knew that in the divine vibration, random violence could not occur in their presence. Nothing is stronger than the vibrational frequency of light and love if it is held in integrity. Therefore, they knew that those who wished them harm were powerless in their presence. Yes, these lesser lights could inflict damage, but it would have no effect on the totality of their existence unless it served the God source. These earth-based volunteers knew that regardless of what occurred to their physical body, they were beyond the reach of humanity's touch. Thus, they feared not the issues of mortal humans, for they knew that they had the protection of all creation. This fact alone caused great concern among many Earthians, for there were those who wished to control and manipulate humanity, but because of the volunteers were without fear, many were impossible to control through threats of violence and death. The enlightened volunteers were without judgment, therefore, they were beyond the use of shame and doubt and/or public disclosure or control techniques, because the enlightened volunteers used no techniques to control or manipulate others. They were beyond the influences of all methods of control. They simply existed in their power of oneness. Try as others might, nothing could induce these volunteers to behave in any way inconsistent with their belief structure. Many enlightened volunteers were sent to their death because they feared nothing, including death. Volunteers were often seen as threats to those who wished to keep Earthians in servitude. Those who wished to end the influence of these volunteers rarely saw the significance of their action. Rather than end the influence of the volunteer, death usually inspired greater influence. When volunteers gave up their lives in the line of duty for the greater good, they were given more responsibility and power in their next Earthian experience. Those who sought to put out the flame of truth only empowered it. Earth-based volunteers learned of the true power of love and light as they moved into the oneness of the divine frequency. In times of trouble, they had been told to send love, or they had been told to love their enemy. But these words took on new meanings as they radiated this frequency. They knew that to send love was to send out a vibrational energy field. The energy field affected all in its presence. To send love to a place of disharmony was to give all in that location a vibrational choice. This energy field often caused peace to descend on the area, even though few understood why. The volunteers willingly sent this powerful force field to places of hate, fear, and unhappiness, as this broke up the current energy field and provided the residents in that place an opportunity to make new choices. This acted much like cosmic Drano. It caused the energy to begin flowing again, but those in its presence were free to make the same choice that got clogged it in the first place. Therefore, by sending love, the divine plan of free will was never violated. The volunteers knew the power of this field. It sent to plants. They grew faster and fuller. If sent to people, it caused sense of well-being and peace. If sent to food, it changed the molecular structure so that it became more nutritious and stayed fresher longer. If sent to wild animals, they became tame. The volunteers knew too of the dangers of using this force field. If used wrong, in a wrong manner, or in a wrong intent, the same power that was used for good could backfire and destroy those who used it. This was done when the love vibration was used for control and manipulation. Unconditional love meant that the love vibration was giving without strings or motive. It was freely shared with all, including one's enemies, to be used in any manner desired by the recipient. If love was sent to fix something, then it was conditionally love and no longer served the greater good. Love sent to perceived enemy for the purpose of making him or her a friend is conditional love, since it comes with strings. In essence, what is being said is, I will give you this love if you choose it only in the manner I outline. An employer who sends love to a troubled employee to help him or her become more productive or relieve the employer's burden is sending conditional love. An employer who simply sends love to a troubled employee is sending unconditional love. No outcome is being embraced. Thus, there are no strings to the gift of love, no conditions are presented with the gift. A friend who sends love to heal a sick friend is sending conditional love. This may be well-intended love, but it's conditional nonetheless. A friend who simply sends love to a sick friend is sending unconditional love. Love, light, and God all carry the same frequency. Therefore, sending God's blessings carries the same power as holding someone in the light or sending unconditional love. Conditional love comes with strings, expectations, and motives. Thus, the recipient must use the energy field for the healing or relieving burdens or whatever purpose was intended. This is a form of manipulation and/or control, which is a violation of free will. The Earth-based volunteers use this incredibly high love light energy to serve the greater good. Therefore, they offer their love and light to all who need, desire, and want it. They offer their own vibrational frequency of love to all who are in their presence, not to fix or alter, but to provide the opportunity for all to willingly choose the light and love of God's source, which is the place of great joy and peace and harmony. As the earth-based volunteers moved into this vibration of love, they moved into a reunion with the divine source. This reunion allowed them to have access to the collective universal consciousness of all that has occurred on this planet and beyond. Much like a giant computer filled with all the knowledge in the world, this consciousness contains all wisdom. Like a computer which must be entered, then requested to give forth information, so too one must seek the answer from within, and it is given. The seeking of answers in the place of one's center acts to unlock the information. And while the vibrational alignment gives one access, possession alone does not cause the computer to release its treasures. The enlightened volunteers knew this and understood the access process for all wisdom. They knew that they knew what God wanted them to know. They trusted in the wisdom of the divine plan of which they were a part of now. In the place of center, the volunteers learned to seek counsel with all that is. On all issues of importance, they learned to access the great minds of all times from all universes in this vibrational oneness. They learned that they had earned the right to take their sacred place among the magnificent ones of all creation. They'd earned their place of honor, for love had caused them to break through the earthly illusion and connect with their own greatness and source of power. Once the vibration of unconditional love and light had been attained, all was laid open before the volunteers, for now they had the wisdom to use and understand the totality of creation. This was indeed the reason the volunteers had entered the earthing experience. In this powerful vibratory state, the volunteers began the awesome task of anchoring heaven on earth. They knew that heaven was not a place but a vibratory state of being. Heaven was being in divine connection with God's source. Heaven was indeed the dwelling place of the God source. When the volunteers moved into the state of love, they existed in heaven while living on earth. They illuminated the way for others to enter this magical kingdom while in the physical embodiment. The earth-based volunteers were given many procedures and techniques to assist them in raising their individual and collective vibrations and being at peace with their earthly existence. Because water was so abundant on earth, it was often used to trigger this remembrance of peace and love. Water, or the image of water, would serve as a reminder to go with the flow, to bend and blend with all that is, to move with the ebb and flow of earthing experiences. The following images and directions were given to and were often followed by the Earth-based volunteers to their greatest advantage. You may choose to bring forth the images and memories as you read. Sit and bring forth an image of beautiful, lush green grass, calm and peaceful. Your breathing is slow and deep. Each breath draws in God, essence. In that essence is found the unconditional love vibrations. With each breath, you release all that no longer serves you. Ask the angelic helpers to assist you in breathing in that which serves you and releasing all that is restricting and or limiting. This vibration is the energy of the universe, the oneness of all that is. Breathe it in. As you exhale, you breathe out the tension and the heaviness of the earth vibration. You feel the peace and harmony of all that is. Feel the love of Mother Earth. Continue the breathing and allow your thoughts to turn to love as you allow your conscious to begin to float over the green fields before you. As you look out over the grassy knoll, you see a beautiful, clear, natural spring of crystal blue water bubbling from the ground. It bubbles forth, bringing you a sweet sensation of joy and peace. The water is the vibration of unconditional love. As you watch, the spring seems to respond to your joy. It sends forth more water, seeming to come alive in response to your appreciation. The beautiful crystal spring of love pours forth more water. Now, it is a small fountain rising a foot or more out of the ground. You continue to watch and find pleasure in the watching, the joy of your experience pouring forth from your heart. This empowers the water that knows only the joy of its existence. Again, the spring adds more pleasure to its flow, and it rises several feet from the ground. The spring is now a small fountain rising from Mother Earth. The more love and joy and appreciation you feel, the more the fountain is enhanced. Over and over, the cycle is repeated until this fountain becomes a massive geyser that raises hundreds of feet from the ground, washing and purifying everything it touches. As the beautiful, pure water cascades over your body, you feel a warm, loving, tingling sensation throughout every cell. It is a wonderful sensation, and you can feel the negativity and lower vibrations being washed away. With each drop, you feel the difference as each cell of your body is filled with loving vibrations. Each cell explodes with love. Your heart sings with joy. You send your appreciation to the fountain. The fountain is again empowered, and it again grows until its flow of purifying water washes the whole of the world. The world too feels the gentle cleansing of its lower vibrations, and all of earth tingles and responds. You stay in the vibration of love and light for as long as you choose. This waterfall is symbolic of the God essence sending forth love to humanity. All humanity needs to do is simply receive and appreciate the gift. As Earthians continue to appreciate this wondrous flow of universal love, they begin to feel a small bubbling and their very essence. The essence of humanity is the God force love vibration, but it has been encrusted with layer upon layer of choices at an earthian level. Earthians who recognize God's gift of love create a small crack that allows this love to pour forth. Humanity's reaction to this small spring of love will determine whether it grows or closes up, leaving it sealed once more in the layers of illusion. If Earthians will but watch and allow this spring of love, it will grow until it becomes the mighty force that washes away the lower vibrations from all it touches. Eventually, this force could heal the entire planet. Earthians' reactions to the small bubbling forth of love can be varied. Some see it as weakness and quickly patch the cracks. Others fear that this joyous feeling must be of the devil, for they believe God desires a serious and stern world. Some quickly look around for an object for this wondrous love, feeling that whoever their eyes gaze upon must be the cause. If humanity would but allow this spring of love and empower it with thoughts of appreciation, what a world of joy would emerge. But alas, in the physical, there are so many distractions, so many reasons to seal the cracks, or so humanity believes. These distractions turn minds away from contemplation and the realization of the perfection that is humanity's heritage. If only the volunteers and Earthians would sit and allow the memories to flow forth. These memories would force their opening to the light and love of God, enabling Earthians to truly let go and let God. All are taught to go within, but relatively few heed the advice. The earth-based volunteers know all of this in their hearts of hearts. Their higher selves who remain in constant contact with the God essence know this. When not in the physical, they know that what is created by God is real. What is made by humanity is only an illusion that can be quickly changed. But while in the physical, these volunteers get caught up by the illusion, believing it to be real. Thus, the cracks that allow love to flow are often patched over to better protect themselves from the earthy and pain. If they would but let the love flow, there would be no pain. Lessons of love were often the most challenging for the earth-based volunteers, but always they contained the biggest reward when mastered. The focus of much of the earth-based volunteers' life was on allowing love. Many were able to choose love, and some did not. All were allowed to choose as the divine plan, and this was good, as the divine plan always is. Chapter 6 is Releasing Fear. Thank you. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. So much love and light and joy. Thank you. Love you. I choose love. Thank you.